some solid guidelines of what I really need to remember to put in there, how I can structure a class so that everything between my 104 class or my 200 class, 300 or 400 class, that if the student knows what to expect when they come in, they're going to have a set mechanism to walk through the class that they're already aware of. And we tend to forget things from one class to the next as instructors when we're building it, so it gives us the ability to go back and go, oh yeah, I need to put this in there. So it's really given me a way to maintain consistency all the time.
I think it really has helped me structure things a little bit better. I went through a similar process maybe 7 or 8 years ago that really helped me kind of organize my online course. And it was nice to go through that again and kind of have a reminder of what it is that people look for when they're navigating through a course.
Just the best practices aspects of online classes, a lot of that I've been able to incorporate into my classes are generally face-to-face, and so it's actually helped me use the learning management system in a more sophisticated way, just because of the different sort of tools that I learned that people who work specifically only online, the things that they use, those you know, as you're using the learning management system, you can do them whether you're interacting with students personally or just online.
It has improved my teaching immensely, and I really do mean that. I've been a professor here at Humboldt State now, I almost don't want to say, but 34 years. And I have to say, I am more confident, more comfortable in my teaching than I ever have been. I absolutely have learned so much from QOLT, so I'm so glad I went through that program.
After participating in the QOLT program, I feel the design and delivery of my courses have improved. The QOLT training program provides instructors with a step-by-step guide for exemplary practices in online teaching and course design. The training is interactive, and QOLT team provides support throughout the process. By participating, I was able to identify my weaknesses in the course. So it gave me a guideline for best practices for quality online learning and teaching. It helped me recognize the areas of my course that needed improvement. And then it provided me with the tools and support that I needed to make the appropriate changes.
For students, using QOLT has set some pretty high standards for them. It provides them with the guidelines, so they get all the rubrics up front. They get all of the course expectations immediately on day one of class. So it gives them the ability to evaluate the course on day one and make the decision if this is the course for them, and also gives them exposure to what is really going to be expected of them over the next 15 weeks of their life, and can they really commit to it? Can they live up to those expectations? And it gives them the ability to determine if they need to continue in this course, or do they need to look for another course that's out there that the expectations either A, aren't so high, and that's not negative, but it is also about, can they handle the workload with everything else they're doing, so they as a consumer can make the choice between what option is best or not best for them.
I think it definitely helps them, as I said, navigate the course effectively. I think it's also helpful with certain learners. Certain learners definitely look for things like the objectives. What is this module? What am I supposed to take away from this part of the course? And so having that all clearly defined as a part of going through the QOLT process has been, I think, helpful for them and helpful for me to make sure that everything ties back into the end goal.
Much more thoughtful, especially on a weekly basis, about what our goals are for the week and really articulating that to my students, and then recapping at the end of the week to make sure that we've achieved the goals that we had. So I think it's just made me much more thoughtful about the idea of learning outcomes than I've been in the past.
I think by going through the QOLT rubric and going through the QOLT classes and having my own class evaluated by peers, it's really given me another way of looking at my class, looking at it from more of a student standpoint as opposed from a teacher standpoint. I think that's really been helpful to me. It's not just informed my online teaching, because I'm teaching an online public speaking class, but it's also, I think, informed, and I'm really excited about this part, it's informed by face-to-face classes as well. So I think it's really been helpful to me.
Student learning has improved because of the changes that I've made. I've changed the navigation to be more user-friendly. I've increased my instructor presence and the instructor-student contact. By revisiting the student learning outcomes, I was able to better link my assessments with the course learning objectives. I focused my attention on timely feedback for students and provided students with more opportunities to ask questions and to give me feedback.
So using QOLT's best practices, I have changed my feeling about a couple of things. I have always been very resistant to using student examples for the basic reason there is, you show a student, here's an example of what student A did 2 semesters ago. Well, if that's how student A did it, then that's how the current student thinks they absolutely have to do it, and if they do it that way, they're going to get the highest possible score on an assignment. What I found is if I can show them multiple examples of an unsuccessful assignment to a very successful assignment, it has helped them develop their approach to the assignment. The other thing that I've been a little overly resistant to is the constant feedback. Not just my giving them feedback, but feedback from the students. There's always that fear of, okay, if I open the floodgate, what are they going to tell me that I don't, that, we're all very self-conscious, and we become defensive when we feel that we're being judged is the best way to put it. So when you get feedback from a student that is, hey, I really like this is great, but this is really not that great, and if you can get them to explain why it's not great, it could be as simple as the instructions aren't as clear as you think they are. I mean, how I read, I know what I wrote, I know what I meant, so when I read it, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what I mean, but when someone on the other side of the digital wall reads it, they may not be getting the same thing. So it's helped me to really clarify and, sit back and be open to some criticism, constructively though.
I definitely feel some courses you feel a little bit like you're flying by the seat of your pants from one week to the next, and the QOLT process sort of forced me to think that through at the beginning of the semester. So I think the students and I both have a little bit better expectation of what's next. So I think that's made life easier.
So this seems like a kind of a silly thing, but I think it's a really important thing. Now when I have my Moodle page, the kind of news section at the top of the Moodle page, I never used that before. I actually hid it before. Usually when my class set up so the first tab was like course documents, right, the syllabus and stuff. And now the class that I'm teaching this semester, I use that news kind of section as a kind of a to-do list. So I tell students, for Monday, this is what we're going to do in class on Monday, this is what you need to bring with you. And so students can just go into the Moodle page and they know exactly what we're doing. They don't have to even go into the syllabus to see the schedule. And that was something that was the way the QOLT program was set up. That was an element of the way that the Moodle page was structured. And I just really like that, and so I use that now all the time, and it very I think it helps students sort of be on track, and that's helpful regardless of what kind of class you're teaching.
I think one of the biggest things that I'm doing right now is allowing for even more class discussion than I used to. I'm doing this online through forums. I'm also doing something synchronously through Zoom. So I think that I'm able to, by doing Zoom sessions with my students, I'm able to look at them individually and get that individual group interaction that sometimes I don't get in a face-to-face class where I have just like 1 or 2 people dominating the discussion. Now it truly, to me, feels as if it's more of an exchange of ideas and everybody's involved in the discussion. So I really like that piece of it. Because I'm teaching totally online, I make time and effort to figure out how to be personable with my students. I don't want there to be this artificial disconnect. And so I go out of my way, I send them a welcome letter. I have 2 videos on that welcome letter, one that's kind of formal, and then at the end, one pretty funny one as well, so they get to know my personality. I'm putting in samples of my students' work from class to class, And my students, when I ask them if I can share their samples with future students, are absolutely thrilled, and they give me written permission to do so. And then my future students, when they look back, they think it's really cool what my students from previous semesters have done, and they feel more comfortable then in doing assignments. I think that's a really important piece when we think about how to help our students achieve the goals that we hope they will meet.
After going through the QOLT training, I completely reworked my syllabus. It is now a resource for students as opposed to just a simple guideline or overview of the course. In addition to the learning outcomes, I included more information on the add drop policy and my late work policy. In addition, I added information on disruptive classroom behavior and even included a video on academic honesty and plagiarism.
So one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from QOLT is look at everything that's out there, find what you're comfortable with using, work with it, experiment with it, play with it, give it to a class, not if you 4 sections in the same class, don't do it to all 4 sections. Give it to one section, see how they really work with it. And if it works, begin to branch it out and have fun doing it, because the more fun you're having, that means your students are enjoying it, they're engaged, and they're having fun, and they're responding, and you can build that up. So if you're going to do this, be willing to experiment and don't get caught in this is how I've done it for the last 10 years and it's worked for me. That's great, it has worked, but is there a way we can make it work just a little bit better?
Okay, so I think the most important thing that I took away from QOLT was the idea that best practices are best practices regardless of the format of your class. If it's an online or if it's face-to-face or if it's a hybrid. The things that we need to be doing that help student learning, they are significant regardless of the way that the course is being delivered.
Well, I think as the key takeaway, I think certainly if you haven't thought about organizing your course in an efficient manner from the student perspective, it's definitely going to do that for you. I think sometimes we feel compelled to jam just as much knowledge as possible into a course, and I think QOLT helps make that not only manageable but more of a coherent process.
I think one takeaway that I want to share is the importance of scaffolding, to really think about things that you are doing, that it allows students to have that support along the way as they develop their knowledge and skills, because that's really who really matters in all of this. It's the students. And what I'm finding is I'm more cognizant of the scaffold and different ways that I can build that scaffold for different types of students.
So this last year, I have incorporated Twitter into my classroom, so my students actually send out tweets every single week. They're required to send 3 out. 1, something that they've learned. 2, give me a current event, something that relates to our course that is happening in the world. And then they either have to reply or retweet something else. So they have a specialized hashtag, and it all feeds right into the course so they can see it, I can track them. And it is giving them the ability to use tools they're already using, things that they use either on a daily basis to communicate with friends or track things. I've noticed with this particular experience of using QOLT to find new ways to do things, that I'm seeing much clearer correspondence from them, both in class and in writing.
I think the course roadmap was probably the most useful thing, just plotting the whole thing start to finish. You know, I've taught the course for a number of years, and I feel like I have a handle on where they're going start to finish, but going through the roadmap, again, really cemented that.
And I do think the thing that I've used most significantly, that I think is most successful, is that idea of sort of road mapping what we're doing. So again, that idea, that sort of the top of my Moodle page having a to-do list for what needs to happen in each class. I think that that's probably been the most valuable thing that I do, and I think it's most enhanced what happens in the classroom is students really know, they come prepared because they know what to expect, and it helps me sort of guide us through the course of the semester in a more thoughtful way.
I would say it's my use of the VoiceThread. I use VoiceThread in my face-to-face public speaking class. but I've taken several steps further in my online class, and I'm finding it so beneficial for the students. They do their opening activity to meet each other through a voice thread. It's a quotation voice thread where they get to know each other and they respond to each other's voice threads. It's been wonderful that way. But in addition, this semester I added in an informative voice thread, so their first informative speech is actually through a voice thread. So they learn how to do visual aids, and then they have a script written out. But they're learning to become comfortable with their vocal delivery and in writing an outline. And then at the end of the class, and this is so cool, after they've done also their face-to-face speeches on via Zoom, we do a voice thread, and the students do a self-reflection and give advice to the students for the next semester. And the students have been so excited about doing that for their future colleagues. That's been a real hit. So I say that's something that really I see as something that I took away and that I encourage others to take away as well, is to really build on assignments.
I created grading rubrics and provided detailed guidelines for assignments and discussions, better communicating my expectations.
So QOLT has helped me in my face-to-face courses to realize that even though I'm seeing them face-to-face, doesn't mean that what I'm saying or what I'm putting up on the screen is getting through to them. So I have to make sure that whatever is up on the course page, whatever I'm sending out to them, has all these very clear, very direct connections and instructions to everything else, that I've built in the links so that if they're listening to me and they think they understand what I've said, and then they go and look at those instructions and realize what they heard is not what they've been asked to do, and I won't say that it's my fault they didn't hear that correctly, but it helps them be very clear with what they need to have done, what they need to get into me, and also provides them with ways to communicate. By providing these multiple ways in which they are allowed to communicate with me, I'm able to answer their questions more timely and more effectively.
In the same way, really. It made me take a look at the structure, beginning to end. I think in face-to-face you have a little more leeway to fudge things. If the students are not clear on what's happening, you see that in their face and you can kind of make it up as you go along. But if you go through that road mapping process in the same way, you reduce a lot of that confusion right up front.
So I think we tend to think of online classes very different than face-to-face, and they are in certain ways. But what makes good teaching and learning is, crosses those barriers.
I think taking QOLT and doing the online public speaking class, what's so wonderful is I am now already actively putting what I've learned from QOLT into my current face-to-face classes. Just as an example, my students in my upper division general education class are now doing voice threads. And so that's really cool. An assignment that I did in my public speaking class that I developed through QOLT, now I'm doing the same thing in my face-to-face upper division class. And it's just really a joy to see the students discovering something new because they've not done something like this before.
I included more details on learning styles, student disability accommodations, and accessibility. I created more detail about the grading breakdown and my expectations for students on how they would be graded. And lastly, I created a section of student resources with phone numbers and links and a description of those resources for students.
Advice that I'd give up here about QOLT: don't be intimidated by it. It's a long list and it looks daunting, but when you get into it, there's a lot we're already doing. There are a lot of things that are on this magic list that we already do. We just don't necessarily think that's what we're doing. And the terminology on the list may not be how we express it in our syllabi or how we express it in our philosophies of teaching, but we're doing it already. So if we can just begin to marry those together and say, hey, look, I am doing this, and then finding how you can do it a little bit better, and then you might find something you're not doing at all, like, I have never thought about that. That's a really good example that I could actually use and incorporate.
Do it. Do it now. I think definitely it's a valuable process. It really it helped me identify some gaps in the course that I didn't realize were there. So I definitely recommend it, even if you feel like you've got it all together.
Do it. Just do it. I would say look at the rubric, really think about it, because the COLT rubric and the interaction you have from peers who have used the COLT rubric, that can really help inform your teaching and lead to students accomplishing those student learning outcomes that you hope they will. They actually will do it.
Advice would I give a peer? Well, I think that I really benefited from going through the training, just in terms of what I learned about what it looks like to be on the student side and the way it's improved my teaching. And so I think that my advice, and I do encourage people, is that doing the training and getting certification so that you can sort of evaluate classes strikes me as a valuable thing. You know, that you get to see the way that different people do things, and you learn from that. And just learning generally what are best practices in terms of teaching. So I think my takeaway is I think more people should do the training, because I think that it'll get you thinking about new ways about what you're already doing, and then maybe inspire you to jump into doing something even more fully online.
Going through the COLT training allows you to identify weaknesses in your course. It gives you the tools and support to make the necessary changes to your course. And even if they're small changes, the cumulative effect of those small changes makes for a substantially better